Hi, everybody. Welcome to Photographer's Coffee Morning. Today, we've got an interview episode, and we're going to be talking to Oli and Steph from Oli and Steph Photography. They are two absolutely incredible elopement photographers based on the Isle of Skye in the most isolated part of Scotland. If you've ever seen atmospheric, wonderful images from Skye, these guys are going to show you how it's really done.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, everyone.
And for anybody that's a frequent listener to the podcast, you have been a fairly constant feature recently. Almost every week, you've had some kind of involvement in the podcast, and you've been sharing your knowledge quite freely with a lot of other photographers, and it's massively appreciated. But I wanted to give people a little bit of context about you guys and where you came from, like what your practice is, what kind of clients you serve, and what kind of work really lights you up. So to begin with, would you mind giving people a bit of an overview? Like, how did you get into wedding photography? Is it a recent thing for you? Have you been doing this for years? Like, how did you get to where you are today?
That's a massive question to start with.
It's quite a long story.
We'll try and avoid giving you our whole life story.
Do you want to start?
No, I think maybe you start.
Okay. Yeah. I think the first wedding that we shot was actually like back in 2018. And at that point, it was very much like a part-time thing. We both had other careers. And just to kind of rewind a little bit, I guess some of our backstory is that we actually met working in the subantarctic. I was working down there as a biologist, and I kind of fell in love with taking pictures of penguins mainly and other seabirds. And Ollie was down there working as a chef as well as like a field worker and photographer. And so when we met, we really bonded over photography, mainly, like I said, the penguins, the landscapes, that kind of stuff. And when we ended up back in the UK living together and we started trying to think what we wanted to do with our future, like photography was something that really brought us together in the first place. And so like particularly for Ollie at that point, when he decided he didn't really want to be a chef anymore, photography like really made sense to us. So we gave it a go with wedding photography. And we did a few local weddings down in Bedfordshire and Cambridgeshire where we were living at the time. And that's really where we started off. But particularly during the pandemic, we really decided that we wanted to niche down. And this was after we got married ourselves, because we actually eloped in Hawaii, which was amazing. And so that experience really gave us a good insight into the elopement space and how that works as opposed to the traditional weddings. And because we're really outdoorsy people, like that just really fit our personalities more. Getting to take couples out into the mountains and show them the amazing landscapes just really fits with what we like to do as people. And so we took the jump. We removed all weddings from our website, went straight in on elopements. And so we properly started in 2021 when we could actually work again after the pandemic. And Ollie went full-time just over a year ago, and I went full-time a month ago. So still relatively new, I would say, on the scene, but things have progressed quite quickly for us. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, like I guess I would just add to that. We do have I've definitely got a very checkered past. Like if you looked at my CV, I've done quite a plethora of jobs, and I've always been very interested in photography. So although we've only officially been I've only been full time for just over a year, like Steph said, and Steph's just come on board full time. We've always bonded over photography. 20 years, I'm showing my age now, but 20 years ago at university, I had a part-time job in Jessops. So, way back then I was playing with cameras and with film cameras back then. And I've kind of always flirted with different genres of photography. I had a bit of a midlife crisis working in a fashion studio, Big Sky Studios in North London for a bit. I've been all around the world with landscape photographers, and I managed to morph my chefing job into sort of a job that meant I got to hang out with very famous wildlife photographers in Antarctica, where Steph and I met. So we could just do a podcast on our backstory, and and I think all those experiences have led us to this point, and for us, this niche that we found ourselves in is kind of an expression of all that past in one beautiful mix.
I'm not going to lie. I think I speak for everybody else here when I say, thank goodness you didn't start photography when you started your business, because your work is so good. If you'd progressed that fast, I think the rest of us would have to hang our cameras up right now. Like, honestly, I can't.
That's so kind of
You
you.
said, "Oh, we started in 2021." I'm looking at the work and thinking, "But this is mature photography. This is incredible. Like, you got a command of like how to pose people. You know what a good environment should look like. You genuinely and truly have a full mastery of people and places, and I can see why you've niched to where you're at. And if you look at your history, I guess it makes even more sense that you, like you said, you started as fashion landscape photographers in some of the most wild parts of the world. How many people can say they met the significant other in Antarctica? I mean, I don't think there's that many people that could even say they've been to Antarctica, never mind found somebody there. And I can imagine that culture shock as you came back being so stark. Like, you've gone from this barren, wonderful environment with limited people to being in a noisy, loud environment where there's so many traditions imposed. So was it that kind of contrast that helped you to kind of decide that, no, really, elopements are what we want to do? We don't want to be in this kind of more traditional environment. We need to do something that leans into our interests and our strengths. Or was it just a circumstantial thing? What exactly led you from traditional weddings that you may have started anywhere to doing what you do now in a very beautiful place, in a very beautiful way?
So I think when we came back from Antarctica, I mean, combined, we've probably spent 6 years down there together in total. So it's a lot of time. And we always knew that we didn't want to live in suburbia, that we wanted to be in a more wild and remote place because it's what we love doing. And so, when we started doing weddings, like, we did enjoy it. We're not saying that we don't enjoy traditional weddings, but we quickly felt that it just didn't speak to our souls as much as being in the outdoors. And I think the turning point really was when we had our own elopement. It was just the two of us. We went out there. We had this like amazing day doing something that was really unique to us, and just that experience and also the challenges with eloping as well, going to a different country and not really knowing how to do this. It's your first time in this place and you're trying to figure everything out. When we got back and we started photographing bigger weddings again, we just kept thinking back to our own experience of getting married and just thinking, like, that's something we want to see other couples doing. And over in the US, it's a huge market, but here in the UK, it's much newer, really. Not brand new, but it's gaining in popularity a lot. But just the option to give that experience to other people that are coming here, like particularly from abroad, like a lot of our couples are from the US, Canada, Australia. It's not just UK couples. Making it easy for them to have that experience is just something that we became really passionate about. And, as we've already said, that love of the outdoors and the environment, getting to spend the day like hiking around the mountains of Skye or going on boat trips and seeing seals and just sharing that with couples, to us, like, that's just so much fun. And it's just
powerful.
It's much more us than the more traditional wedding scene and kind of the things that happen on normal wedding days, which tend to be like quite formulaic, whereas this we love because every elopement is completely different, from camping on the top of a mountain after like a 6-hour hike and wading through rivers with one couple to going on a boat trip with another couple to just having a relaxed day hanging out at the pub and going on some little hikes with others. So it's just that variety thing that really like excites us.
Yeah, I'd say, I'll just add to that I think when we shot those big weddings, we felt very much that we were just one of many vendors that the couples had to book. And for us, the connection wasn't really there. I mean, we still enjoyed it, and it seemed like a great change from chefing, which was what I was doing before. But yeah, as soon as we experienced our first elopement with a couple, just that bond that we had with them. I think we go into our elopements and we've got to know our couples really well, to the point where maybe it sounds a bit cliche, but it does. We like to think for them it feels like they're meeting friends on the day. They know who they're dealing with already, and it's it is a very intimate experience with them. Sometimes we'll spend just us and a couple 8 hours together. So it's so important that we do get on with them. I'd also like to say, you asked sort of where did this all come from originally, and like our COVID story. I feel like I have to be quite sensitive talking about this because I know that the pandemic and COVID affected a lot of wedding photographers very negatively. And we obviously, on a personal level, we were really badly affected by COVID as well. Like, we lost family members to it. But for our business, it was a very useful time for us. We didn't have that many bookings at that point, relatively, and that was a period that we were able to really niche down to elopements and really sort of go in a different direction and rebrand. As soon as the lockdown was lifted, we went on numerous style shoots to build up a portfolio. And big shout out to Rebecca Carpenter at that point. She was, we learned so much from her. And so for us, that was quite an important time, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting you say that, because you're right that there are an awful lot of people that were brutally affected by this. But I think what you're talking about is the necessity, because people still fall in love. People still want to commit to each other for a lifetime. That doesn't change. And the fact is that, especially in England, it was very difficult to get married, and you couldn't get married outdoors. So weddings just stopped. So I can kind of see, by necessity, people that were absolutely determined to be married will find another solution. So for you guys, you had an accelerator because you knew that there was a larger group of people that were looking for what you were offering. But I kind of argue that the best thing about what you did was what Steph was touching on before. I don't know obviously I don't know how intentional this was from the beginning, but just the way you seem to be able to show people how to do something and help them discover their way to find what they want. Like you were saying, you felt your own experience when you went and eloped was difficult, and you thought that this can't be the only way. How do we make this possible for other people? I'd love it if you could talk a little bit more about how you help people to kind of arrange their elopements, because as you said, you're not one of many vendors. In many cases, you're the people that are going to be more responsible for taking charge here. So how do you help people to get from the point where they're thinking, you know what, maybe I want to get married in a magical place that feels like it's out of a fairy story, or something so breathtaking that helps me feel connected with nature, but it's not where I am. How do I get there? How do you help them to get from that position to getting married on a mountaintop or in front of a lake?
Yeah, so it's a really good point, Tom. And one of the things that we do is that we describe ourselves as not just photographers, but also as planners as well, because it's very different to kind of when we were doing traditional wedding photography, where people would book you, you'd maybe send them out a questionnaire to get the timeline of the day, and then just show up and shoot it. And that's kind of more typical. But for us as elopement photographers, like the couples that are coming to us, as I said, most of them aren't from the UK. Like they have no idea even like which airport to fly to, how to hire a car, what they, where they should go on their trip, to, the more specific details on what are the legal requirements for getting married here, how do they book a celebrant, how do they get flowers, all of these things. So we wanted to take away the stress that we, experienced a little bit of when we were eloping ourselves. And so from the very beginning of our relationship with our couples, we set up some planning groups with them so they can communicate with us easily online. And we also have quite a few different resources. So, just on our website, we've got a how to elope in Scotland, how to elope on Skye, how to elope on the Outer Hebrides guides. And then once couples are booked in, they get access to like much more detailed information. So might sound kind of overwhelming, but we have a 100-page guide that we send to them, which is basically everything they need to know about planning an elopement here in Scotland. And we also send them a series of questionnaires just to try and understand them a bit better. So often, like, they won't know where they want to get married in Scotland. We do a lot here on Skye, so they may know Skye, but they don't know where because they haven't been here before. So through the questionnaires that we send them, which really like delve into their vision for the day and kind of what they're imagining, we then put together a really detailed timeline for their day based on their preferences, which helps make things stay unique. So it's really important to us that they have this like open channel with us all the time. So it's not just them planning it alone or us planning it for them. It's like a very collaborative process, which I think really helps with what Oli was saying about us trying to become friends with them. So on the day, it doesn't feel awkward having these strangers show up and photograph them, which can feel intimidating for most people. So that's kind of one of the big aspects. And we actually, last year, we went one step further and we started having a planning package as well that we offer. So for couples who don't want to have to be contacting multiple vendors to figure this stuff out, for like one add-on fee, we just book everything for them. So their celebrant, their flowers, their hair and makeup. We take care of all of that, so they don't have to think about that. And obviously we have discussions about their preferences for these things, but that really helps them to just be able to like not worry about that and just think about the exciting parts of coming here and getting married.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. Like I think we've been quite strategic in the way that we've done that and rolled that out. We try to aim for quite a high price point. And so we give a lot back in return for that. So we try not to take too many bookings on throughout the year, so that we know we've got enough time to really help each couple through all of the planning. And we're obviously very lucky that there's two of us doing this job. At the moment, we only offer photo, so there's two of us on this. So that gives us a bit more time to support our couples.
One of the things that kind of jumped out to me then was you were talking about how to get a questionnaire to get a feel for how these people want to interact and how they want to enjoy this time away eloping on Skye predominantly. But one of the things I thought about was that gives you so much opportunity to tailor things. So with you being the planner and the photographer, you sidestep so many challenges that other photographers may have working what is essentially a luxury event. Obviously, luxury takes many different forms. You're the polar opposite of the traditional ballroom wedding in somewhere in the States. You're not the kind of photographers that will just do the same thing over and over again. You're working in wild environments with vastly changeable weather conditions and lighting, and you embrace all of that in the photography. But by helping them plan, it means you can choose the time of year that would give them the weather that they wanted. It lets them like have a look and decide how cold they want to be. Do you want to be in this kind of barren, like cold, like environment, kind of stood in the middle of a field rosy because of the wind coming through the valley? Like, or do you want to be that person that's kind of shocked by the dawn sunrise, like in the middle of summer? And those two kinds of approaches sit really well together in your work. You kind of embrace the variety that's in the landscape that you're in. And I guess my question was, how does that kind of play into this kind of notion of traditional luxury wedding photography? Because I think if I called you a luxury wedding photographer, you'd probably chafe a little bit at that label. But the service that you're providing will probably feel like a luxury for the people that you're working with. So as people that are providing a luxury service, how do you see yourselves as being different from the wedding industry at large that provides high price services?
So yeah, that's an interesting point, Tom. And I would say, in terms of the event, what photographers would imagine as luxury, the ballroom weddings, like the destinations with like the fancy shoes and the beautiful dresses, that kind of thing isn't really part of what we do. But I would say that we classify ourselves as like high-end elopement photographers, because the couples that come to us, they're willing to put, quite a high budget towards their photography because they really value photography. And Oli and I always say, like, in some respects, elopement photography is almost, the photos are almost more important to the couples than in our experience of traditional weddings, because quite often it's just the couple here. So none of their family and friends are going to be there and actually witness the day. So to have those photos to go back home with and be able to share that, and even just for themselves to be able to look back on the day, that is really, really valuable. And so that's, it means we take things really seriously. And I think, we have to put a lot into this from the planning perspective as well. So I think that really adds to the experience. For us, again, it's not just about the photos, it's about their entire experience when they come to the island, from the moment they book us to the moment they receive their album in the mail. Like, that whole experience, we want them to feel valued. We want them to feel like they get all their questions answered, and that, down to on the day, we'll drive them around so they're not having to worry about how to do things and how to get about. So we try and provide them with a luxury service so that they go away having had an amazing experience. They might have gotten covered in mud and hiked in the rain, which you wouldn't classify as a normal luxury experience. But to the kind of couples that we work with, this is what they're looking for. And so to us, giving them that really high value experience is really important.
Yeah, I'd say we're really trying to push that adventurous element. We want these these couples that we work with to feel like they've had an adventure for their wedding day. They've already made that big decision to elope and to make their day just about them. So we want to make it like quite a momentous day for them, I guess, in a lot of cases. And I think it is quite a common misconception in the wedding industry that, elopements, you are stripping back, right? Like you're moving away from 80 plus guests and everything that entails. But like it's I mean, we found going into this, it almost requires more energy throughout the whole process than just rocking up for a big wedding day. We certainly feel, like I remember after a big wedding, you feel quite knackered, right? The next day, it's almost like a hangover. And at the end of an elopement day, we're still buzzing and like we could keep shooting into the night. But if you look at the amount of energy that goes in for each couple over the whole period from when they first contact us to, like Steph said, when their album's delivered, I think, it's a lot more input over a long time.
Yeah. And I think it really varies between couples as well, because some couples, they want a really stripped back experience. They just want to go for a little hike, have some photos, maybe go to the pub, get a pint and a burger, and like have that really stripped back approach.
Yeah.
Whereas we have other couples who want to have a luxury outdoor picnic with a bell tent and like amazing cakes and desserts and like a whole band just for them. Like I think that's the definition of luxury, is hiring a band just for two people. Like that's pretty luxury.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on the couple, and like we're super keen to be able to give that entire breadth of experiences, from the simple to like the much more elaborate. It keeps it more exciting as well.
I would just add as well, I think for us, really pushing the sort of local factor, our local knowledge here. We've only been on Skye for 2 years, but already we feel very confident here. And I think compared to, like a lot of photographers are going to push destination as a luxury way of working. And I mean, as we've alluded to, Steph and I have already spent a lifetime traveling. We've traveled so much, and we feel like now we're ready to settle here on Skye. And I think that really helps us to be very thorough with the services that we're providing to our couples.
It's interesting that you the way you describe this, because there's kind of like an intimacy element to all of this as well, because everything you just described is essentially you and two other people, and that's it. There is no other element to it for a great deal of it. If they do end up going for the hike and then go back to the pub for a pint and a pie, like that's definitely something really chill and super quiet. But again, it's the two of you and the two of them. And if you decide to go at the top of a mountain, I did have visions of a string quartet carrying cellos on their back. I thought that would be quite a sight to behold. But it was so the idea that they could kind of be in an expansive space and hear how that music sounded in that moment, and be taken back to how it felt to be quiet together in a loud, like rustic environment with music that they've chosen playing in an ambient way. Both of those two experiences are intimate in different ways. And one of the things that stood out to me is that essentially you're making sure that the people that you work with feel like they've got space to be themselves and to be on their own. And part of why I wanted to tackle the luxury element is I kind of wanted to break down the stigma that luxury weddings should be a certain way, as if somehow people with money should all behave the same way, or people should all care about investing in the same things. And it just isn't the case. Like it's probably a good point to say that recently we've been working together on kind of branding and visual identity with both of you. And part of the reason why I've enjoyed that process so much here was because it was trying to find a way of helping new couples to see just how much you love the environment you're in and how ready you are to show them a unique experience that's all tied together by this sense of intimacy, of friendship, of connection with the landscape, and ultimately of honesty. There's this real sense of like wonder for the people in these photographs. And even though some of them are atmospheric and people are kind of overwhelmed by the space that they're in, by far and away my favorite images of yours are couples interacting with each other in an honest way, happy, reflective, just deeply content with the way that they are in each other's company. Almost every single time you take a photograph of a couple walking up one of these incredible mountain faces, it's just this inbuilt sense of wonder. You can kind of see like the bride walking up the mountainside and just beaming because of where they are. And every so often you get one spouse looking over the shoulder to look back at the person they just married in the context of this enormous, expansive environment. And in some of the images, you can see the weather was freezing and they're kind of battling with the elements, but loving it in spite of it. And in other cases, you can see people just embracing this kind of warm wash that comes with it all. Like, my wife was looking through one of your galleries yesterday and says, "Oh, look at the dress, that's awesome," because it was trashed. Because these people were more attached to the experience than the objects that came with it. Those trappings were there to help them remember something, and not so much about, you know what, I want to keep this dress forever in a box under my bed that I'm probably never going to look at. This is for this event. This event is special. This place is special to us. We are having a special experience together. And something that you don't present often at the moment, and I understand you're going to change soon, is just how deeply connected you are to those relationships. You literally, in most cases, are the one sitting down signing the register, as I understand it. So I kind of wanted to ask you, what is it like for you two, knowing how deeply connected you're going to be to these clients' weddings? Like, when you get an inquiry through, is that going through your head? Like, how much are you going to invest in these people? How much are you going to be part of their marriage story?
I think we find it really exciting. You know, when we have Zoom calls with couples for the first time, to hear a bit about what they're imagining for the day and telling them sort of what that experience could be in reality, we find it really exciting. And I think maybe we're quite lucky, but most of the couples that come to us, they really fit with what we believe about the world and the way that we live. And so we found that a lot of the people wanting to do this have a very similar outlook to us, which I think makes things a lot easier for us, because, you know, we can connect really well with them. But I think it's just, that sense of excitement. And for us, an elopement day should be joyful and fun and exciting. And so we try and convey that through our imagery. Our couples want to be smiling in their photos and goofing around and having a good time. And like you say, wondering at this amazing landscape they're in. So all of that is really integral to what we want to do.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is narratives, right? Storytelling. And I think by choosing to have an elopement, especially if you're traveling from Canada or America for this day, that's a big story, and that's a big story to tell. So we have a big responsibility for the couple. I think for us, that's really lovely that you've identified that in our work, Tom. Thank you for that, because it is important to us. Obviously, we still want to get the big epic hero shots, and we love our photography as much as everyone. And I feel we've got the skill set to do that from things like Trail Magazine and TGO and stuff that we've been involved with in the past. But for us, the most important thing is that storytelling that you're talking about, is those intimate moments together. And we do try and capture a full range of emotions on the day. So obviously we want those very poignant moments. If there's any tears and things like that, then obviously we want to capture that. But like Steph says, it's equally as important that we get them being silly and having fun on their day. So they remember that when they look back through their album and when they show their albums to all their family and friends at home.
Yeah, because I think we want them to look at their photos and see themselves, not see some posed, stylized version of themselves. Because most of our couples, they say they've either never had their photos taken, or it's something they don't feel that confident with. And we get that. We feel exactly the same. So I think for us, one of the benefits of being a duo is that it's more like hanging out with another couple, especially when it's just us. It's an intense day together. So that really works really nicely. And it's such a privilege for us to actually get to be their witnesses, sign their paperwork. Oli even ends up cutting people's beards. I've done people's makeup. I'm not the greatest makeup artist, but I'll give it a go. So there's all these extra things we end up doing on the day, which helps to really develop that relationship between us.
I would add a bit of a cautionary side to this as well for anyone sort of going into elopements. You do have to kind of set some boundaries and decide your comfort levels. And I guess, we're still quite new in this industry, in this niche, and maybe at some moments we've become almost too involved with our couples, and actually I've started to neglect my family a bit and some of my friends. We're going back to Cambridge, where I'm from, next week to rectify that a bit, to hang out with some of our old friends. But I think that's just the nature. Maybe that just says a lot about who we are and how we like to be with the people we work with. We still meet up with lots of our couples to play board games online, and we chat to them all the time. You know, it's not just that one wedding day that we're rocking up for and just offering that one day service.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's been nice to, I would say, more so than when we were doing the bigger weddings, like actually cultivating real friendships with some of these couples who, you know, we will go and visit them. You know, we've got camping trips planned in Colorado with a couple. I went hiking on Monday with one of our brides, and my legs are still hurting from that because it was fun but hardcore. So
yeah,
you know, we just love like actually making friends through this, and you meet such an amazing like array of people. Like it's so fun to get to hang out with
that's
them.
our way of doing it, Tom, as well. I'm not saying that that's the right way for everyone, but that is how we've got that sort of, I guess, like that luxury element that you're talking about, that couples are prepared to invest in when they want that. And I'm not saying that's right for everyone. I'm sure, you know, there are amazing elopement photographers that they want it to be much more about like just service providing on the day, and then they want to get back to their own lives after that day. And I think it's just the life we're living here in Skye, and at the moment we love it.
It's crazy just how much variety there is in such a small market as well, because you mentioned some brides grooms, like whoever, they want somebody that's just going to be a service provider and be transactional about it. But for those people that want that, those people exist elsewhere. So some people may decide that actually what I really want to be is like the subject of my own fine art piece. And again, there are photographers that are doing that. And again, it's not about somebody doing it right or wrong. It's about finding a fit for the people that you really click with. And if you are going to go to these lengths, like knowing the level of involvement that a photographer needs to get their work done is massively important. And I think with the two of you, the way you're approaching it from the beginning makes it pretty clear that you're there to help. There's a real like air of service that happens all the way through your online presence. Like if you look at their Instagram, I'll put links in the show notes if you want to check it out. Basically, if you have a look through their online presence, they're always trying to keep you in the loop about what's going on, like how they interact with people. If you've been following Instagram for a while, you've probably seen those board games happening, because they do post about the board games and like the way that they keep people back, have a nice whiskey when they're finished. And I know you've got big things coming down the pike as well that are going to change the way that you deal with aftercare for customers as well. Like you've mentioned that, well, I mentioned rather that I feel like your brand is about legacy and about being part of somebody's story in an enduring way that it isn't going to be ever changed. Like you're there from the beginning, from the inception, and hopefully you're providing people with heirlooms that will allow them to continue to look back at this time like fondly, and just generally look through and see what it felt like to be in these moments at the time. And part of what I was trying to get to was that you're crafting an experience that stands out as being uniquely different. And Skye is a really interesting case study because there are so many photographers that want to be doing what you're doing, and so many attempting to do it. And one of the things that I've seen really clearly is a push from you guys to stand apart from that, because you do want to be able to be like make your customers aware that you are for a particular purpose. If you want to be connected, if you want to have images that feel epic in scale but still have an honesty to them that's connected to your environment, that's what you're there to provide. And I just wondered, from your perspective, like how seriously do you take that kind of branding, not in the sense of logo or typeface, but branding in the sense of what people think about your business? How seriously do you take crafting that?
I'd say it's everything to us, and I think what you're talking about is finding your niche, right? Niching down in every element of your business. And like, massive shout out to you, Tom. I think working with you on our workflows, you've understood that pretty quickly, and you've been able to really identify what we stand for, our branding, our positioning, and you've helped us reflect that more in our editing. So we're eternally grateful to you for that. But yeah, I really believe once we found our niche, I mean, you'd think like just shooting elopements, that's a niche in itself, right? And it's true, but you could shoot an elopement in Bali, you could shoot an elopement in Antarctica or in London. So yeah, we've niched down to Scotland, we've niched down to the Isle of Skye, and we've kind of niched down to the kind of people that we want to work with and the experience we want them to have.
Yeah. And I think, for some photographers, putting yourself out there on your Instagram, like all your personal stuff that's going on in your lives. That's not for everybody, but for us, we felt from the beginning, you know, it wasn't easy at the start. Like we both weren't that keen on video.
You were natural.
Well,
I wasn't natural.
Ollie hated it.
The first time we did it,
we'd do like 20 takes for one video, and it was a struggle. But as time progressed and we got into it, you know, we really relaxed into it, and we quite enjoy like sharing our life on Skye, because it's, you know, a lot of our couples, when they come here, they say, oh, I wish we want to move here, like we want this life that you have. And so, you know, last night the Northern Lights kicked off, and I just put an iPhone shot up from the garden last night, and everyone's just like, whoa, that's amazing. And so being able to share kind of that the mysticism of the island and like the adventure of the island is something that's really important to us. And again, you know, from some of our photographers that we got to know when we first started, again, shout out Rebecca Carpenter again, because she's a really good example of somebody you feel like you know when you don't know her. You've just watched her stories. And we really want our couples to feel like that from the beginning, before they've even got in touch with us, that they know us a little bit. And that really helps us to bring in the kind of couples that we want. And even our dogs, you know, our dogs have received more presents, I think, than us from our couples. You know, we've had couples come in just for a couple shoot who've brought personalized dog biscuits with their names on, all the way from America, just from seeing them online. So I think it's crazy. You know, it's like I said, it's not for everybody, but for us, sharing ourselves online and our like life and our fur children has been like really good at bringing our brand into focus and to bring in those clients.
So important. I'd add to that as well, you don't need to have a huge presence, you know, like I think probably last year at times we had maybe 1,500 followers, 1,000 followers on Instagram, but we still, like Steph's been so good with the stories, you know, just constantly putting those Instagram stories up, and that's still a big enough crowd to you know, bring in those bookings and potentially earn you a lot of money, and it's worked for us.
Numbers don't really matter. I think when we started we thought it did, but we've found that's not the case at all.
No, I'd agree with you on that. I was having a conversation a couple of years ago in Clubhouse where we first started doing Coffee Morning with Parker Fitzgerald. He's a photographer that used to shoot for Kinfolk right at the beginning. Somebody that I actually followed on Flickr, because for me, I started out my career doing Polaroid, and he had a 365 project where he shot everything on Polaroid. And he was one of the first recommended users on Instagram. And I remember him talking about how difficult that was, because it meant that the majority of the people that were seeing his posts were only there because Instagram told them to be, and not because they actually wanted to be. So when that algorithm switch happened for him, it was devastating, because it meant that all of a sudden the people that did want to be there, that had proactively sought out his work, weren't seeing it. And I think that helped me to understand that having 100,000, 200,000, 1 million followers, it matters if you're trying to become an influencer and you want somebody to pay you for being on social media. But I think for those of us that are creators, what you want to do is have the smallest audience you can, because if only 3% of people are going to see what I'm making, I'd rather it was 3 people that wanted to see it. So by being so like aggressively yourself, which sounds like a very strange thing to say, you can't be any more yourself than you are, but if somebody doesn't really want to be seeing a lot of stuff about Skye, then they'll probably unfollow. But that's kind of what you want, right? Like you want to have like a compact audience, people that want to be there, that really want to invest with you. And if it's going to be like past brides, grooms, whoever, again, like even people that have been involved in related services, if they're still interested in you, they'll stay. And it's a way of like showing people what you're about. I mean, I did have some questions though, because you've done this very well. Like without a doubt, like I did have a sense of who you were before we even worked together. And that was amazing, because it meant that when I do come and have a look at you, it's easy because you're clear about who you're trying to appeal to. But let's say that you're speaking to another photographer that's basically been doing the same thing for a while. The work's feeling stale. The social presence is feeling stale. How would you recommend somebody start being bolder and being more willing to follow their own interests and show that online? Are there any steps that you would advise people take to get started?
I mean, I think for photographers in that situation, I think having a good look at like what they're putting out there, and then thinking about whether or not that work is reflective of who they are as a person and what they're actually doing in their spare time. And I think it can feel a bit scary, but just take, you can just take a small step and post a couple of things about what you're doing in your life. And I know it's hard because sometimes maybe you think it's not that interesting, that people won't, they don't want to see like the restaurant you've been to, or they're not interested in seeing the walk that you went on with your dog. But in our experience, we've found that people are interested in that stuff. Like they are following you because they want, maybe they're going to get married and they're interested in weddings. But people have far wider interests than just that. Everyone loves dogs, or most people do. Everyone, goes out to restaurants and wants to see these things. So we found that by putting things in there which is nothing to do with wedding photography, or even necessarily about the landscape here on Skye, like we get people messaging us all the time saying, whoa, like that's so cool, that you love this movie, like I love this movie, or it just helps people relate to you more.
Exactly.
So I think just try not to be scared and put it out there. And, and if it's in terms of your work, if you're doing the same stuff all the time, then one of the things that another photographer told us that we found really useful was that, when you're shooting, if you spend 80% of the time getting the stuff you need, like the safe shots, but then the other 20% of the time, just try something new, look for inspiration, not just from other photographers, but kind of more widely, and just have it in your mind, like an idea that you want to try out for each wedding. And if it doesn't work, then never mind, like try something else next time. But through doing that, I think you can really grow, because, we shoot a lot in the same places because Skye has, some epic places, but a lot of our couples, they're drawn to the places we shoot a lot because they're amazing.
Iconic, like landscapes.
Yeah.
That you're going to see in movies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we don't want to just take the same shots there all the time. So we do try and figure out either new techniques to use, or try and find some different areas to go to take those photos.
I would say with that, like, make sure you've got all those safe shots. Like Steph and I, we're very lucky especially if it's just a couple and they haven't got any guests, and we're doing, say, an 8-hour elopement with them. Once the ceremony's done, and we know we've got them a really strong album already, then perhaps in the evening, that's when we're going to do something a bit more creative, like to try some slow exposures of dress movements, or maybe wait for the stars to come out and try some astro shots. It's just something that's going to like push us a little bit more. But I think, just going back to the original question as well, I think, and Steph was talking about being relatable. It's so important. So, like, sometimes we'll have, I don't know, like an epic drone shot to show on social media, and this is the one that's going to make us, and like everyone's going to be talking about this, and we'll post it, and no one cares. And then we'll post something silly the next day, like, I don't know, like the dog's running out in the snow or something, and we'll get just a ridiculous amount of feedback and comments, and a new bride will contact us on the back of it. So I think being relatable is super important.
Definitely. And then I think the kind of final part of that as well is community as well, photography community, because it can be a really isolating job. I think especially if you're a solo photographer, then you don't necessarily need to speak to anybody else like the whole time you're working. So for us, getting involved with some photographers near the start of our career, going on some styled shoots, not just to get a portfolio, but also to make some connections, that's really important. And we've got a really good community of the Scottish elopement photographers where we chat regularly. A lot of them will come to Skye to shoot, and a lot of them will come over, like have a coffee, we'll chat photography and life and other things. And that's been really valuable to us, to get other people's perspectives on things and to push us to try new things as well.
I'd say as well, education, it kind of ties in. Sometimes it goes hand in hand, but Steph and I we've invested a lot in education since we've got into this business. And I wouldn't underestimate the value of that. And working with you, Tom, I think that was something you did with us straight away. You looked at, I don't want to give away too much about what it's like to work with you, but you looked at other photographers in Scotland, and kind of you really delved into whether our message is coming across in everything we're doing, particularly in our editing, and I think that's been really valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
and you're preaching to the choir on the community element. That's literally the reason this exists. Like, I need to talk to more people. Like, and I was having a conversation with a family member like the other day, and basically was saying, do you not get bored of like being on your own all the time? And yeah, definitely. Like, working from home, especially after 2 years in lockdown, feels really, really lame. So like having a community of like-minded people is something you really shouldn't underestimate. And part of the reason why this podcast is predominantly a roundtable discussion isn't because I think you get more information out of it. It's because I think that people deserve a voice and they should be included. So we've had people that are in the first year of business, like brand new starting slow. We've had some people that have just picked up a camera. We've had people shooting for 10, 20, 30 years. And because you can have new perspectives and new people telling you new ways of doing things, and you broaden your horizons. And like you said, even outside of photography, like watching movies, reading magazines, books, literature, art, music, all these things can feed in. But very often you need somebody that you trust the taste of to help recommend those things.
Yeah.
And I think that having that community is huge. On the education front, like I'm really glad that it was beneficial. And honestly, you can think about it like an acceleration to learning that you do on your own. Like I am a firm believer that there's so much information out there that if you have the time and patience to find it, you can definitely learn for yourself. But if you want to do it quickly, speaking to somebody that's gone through that process and knows how to apply it and all those other elements can be a huge accelerator in terms of your time on this. Like you've mentioned Rebecca a few times on this call. Like I'm guessing that you've taken some kind of training with her, because like you said, or was it just a case of like watching her Instagram and thinking like, oh, this is a really good way of doing it, let's try that? Or was it something a bit more formal?
Well, we started up, I actually went to a photography farm in Brighton, I don't know how many years ago, when we were kind of still toying with the idea of wedding photography. And I went to various classes, and one of them was Rebecca's, and I just learned so much from her, just in a few hours. And the next day I did a shoot with her. And then after that, we booked a few of her style shoots she was offering, to the point where Steph even went out to Greece for like 3 or 4 days. I think this is the bottle she got from that trip I'm drinking from right now.
Yeah, that was before we decided that we were completely niche into Scotland. We were exploring what we wanted to do. So we thought maybe we want to do destination stuff in like warm places as well, which eventually we decided wasn't for us. But just having the experience of seeing how people shoot. But I think particularly with her, like seeing how she presents herself online. And then other photographers like Jo Greenfield, who we shot with, but she has an amazing presence online, and both of their personalities come out so much. And although we're not working in the same niche at all, that really helped us with understanding better like what we should be putting out there.
You know, we've Becky from Bell Art was really welcoming and lovely to us as well when we came to Skye, and she is in our niche, and we've learned a lot from her. But I think, like Steph says, you can learn from any photographer. You won't see any of the pictures now, I don't think, that we've shot on any of the shoots we did with Rebecca, because we've moved away from those places and that style of work. But like some of the lessons she gave us, we're still using every day in our business and what we do. So I would add as well, from going back to the education that you're offering, Tom, as well, like obviously it's going to appeal to people in a similar place in their journey to us early on, and then perhaps after a year or two of business. But I can really see the benefit of somebody coming to you with years of experience as well, because I just think the way that you go, I'm talking about this first workflow you did with us, and you looked at everything we did, the way we work with our files, from ingestion all the way through Lightroom, everything we do with them. I think that could be beneficial to anyone, because you can sort of not get stuck in your ways, but you'll do something and you'll keep doing it for years and years, and actually maybe there's faster, more beneficial ways of doing it, which for us that's been so valuable learning from you.
Because I think sometimes it's hard when you're in the thick of it to see the bigger picture, because you're so busy working on the details, editing, coloring, like doing your social media, like being able to take a step back and look at your brand as a whole and to like go through your whole workflow and processes. It's not something that's easy for people to do. So having someone from the outside come in and do a real deep dive into your processes and from the editing side as well, to see, does your edit like actually reflect what you're saying your brand is? Like that's really hard to do when you're like in the thick of it. So having someone like yourself, Tom, do that for us has been so good. Like I can't thank you enough for how that's gone. Absolutely. It's been really, really good.
Allowing somebody into your business regardless of what what discipline they're trying to help you to kind of improve, it is hard. And it's something that I firmly believe in as well. Like I have a business coach that I work with basically every day to some capacity, like accountability, making sure I stay on track. And honestly, quite a lot of self-management, frankly.
Yeah.
Like, because it's difficult to kind of wrangle yourself. And as you said, like when you're in a duo, you have somebody there to be that other person that can help raise you up if you're feeling a bit weaker, or say if you need some objective insight into the way you're behaving, you've got one right there. Whereas for those of us that work solo, like it can be even more beneficial because you don't have that partner challenging you when you have a perspective. But regardless of that, it is difficult allowing somebody access into your business, because I don't know about you, but a lot of my self-worth is tied up in the way that my images look, because you put your heart and soul into making these photographs. You want something that's beautiful for your client, and you have an opinion about the way that should be executed. And especially if you're doing it on a branding level and you want to provide something of value to your clients that also says something, that's not an easy thing to do. And have somebody say to you, like, you know what, maybe there's a different way of doing this that would be better. It is quite easy to feel hurt by that. And there's definitely a lot of self-work that has to go on. And if people aren't careful with the way that they approach those things in the education process, it can be pretty damaging, and it could potentially prevent somebody from learning. So to hear you say that and say that it has been beneficial and it has been helpful really means a lot, because I take it seriously. I think that if you're going to trust me enough to let me into your business, I have a responsibility to make a tangible improvement in the way that things work. And if it isn't improvement in your eyes, it's not improvement. It doesn't matter what I think.
But I just got to say, I think one of the strongest points of working with you is that one-on-one experience we've had with you. I was thinking about this after we worked with you before this podcast. I was clocking up in my head. I reckon we've spent over 30 grand on education since we started elopement photography. So that's a serious outlay, and just thinking back to all the education we've done, it's, you sign up for these big courses and you can learn a lot from them, but you need a lot of discipline to work through them. Whereas like having these appointments with you, Tom, one-on-one, and you are being very vulnerable. You're showing. I remember we got on that first session. You're like, right, open up Lightroom. Let's have a look at what you're doing. I was like, oh gosh, like someone's getting, it's like letting somebody into like your messy house or your messy bedroom and seeing how you operate. But I think it just helps that you're an incredibly patient and humble guy, Tom. And I think you probably saw that last session we had when we worked on our preset. So I probably really overworked our preset over the years from I think that just comes from so many different influences and stuff, and you really stripped it back. And I think you saw that vulnerability on that last session when we realized that we were going to start doing things a lot simpler. I did find that quite difficult, but you were so patient, and luckily Steph was patient too.
It's about simple processes to get to a complex outcome. Because like you said, like things like that can develop over years, and without getting too deep into the weeds on this, like this one specific situation, like there is definitely something to be said for like you learning a technique and thinking you have it mastered, then moving on to the next one, and over time you build up this body of work that ends up taking a long time to produce, because the way you learn was the way you learn, and not the best way to do something, especially not when you look at the final result first and work back. But one of the things that I would mention on that is, first of all, that £30,000 is definitely not all with me. I just want to put that right out there. That's not me. But it does show that, like, because again, like I said to you right at the beginning, people, if you told somebody, oh yeah, we opened a business during the pandemic, and then they looked at your work, I'm pretty confident it would blow their brain, because this is not a 1-year-old business. This is not the wisdom that comes from operating this kind of business for a year. It just isn't. And especially not for one where the operators have only been working at it for a month collectively. This is not where you are. And without trying to diminish what you've done, because I don't feel that's the case, it does show how much additional knowledge you can acquire quickly when you intentionally and thoughtfully hire professionals to help you to build something. And what I wanted to kind of make clear was that this is definitely not diminishing what you're doing, primarily because The difference between knowledge and wisdom is that knowledge is the information that you take in. Wisdom is knowing what to do with it. And that comes with application. So the fact that you've taken what these people have been teaching you, that you've paid your good hard-earned money for, you've run with it and used it as the building blocks and foundation stones of your business. But the more impressive thing, and the thing I want to come back to, is your characters and your taste. Because you're pretty much the only people on the planet that I'm aware of that moved to Scotland to be somewhere warmer, because Antarctica's got to be a hell of a lot warmer.
This is true.
But it's you said something in your previous comment about trying to discover what you wanted to do, and that phrase in itself already kind of conjures images of curiosity. You're thinking like, I was trying to discover what we wanted to do, and there's a lot of trial and error involved. And like you said, you were investing heavily in these things to try and learn what was right for you. For anybody that's struggling with that maybe is at home and thinking, like, I know I need to make a change, I need to do something differently, but I don't know where to start looking to discover what I want to do. Have you got any advice for being bold about making those kinds of choices, either in education or experience in life?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you don't have to go out and spend 30 grand immediately on education, because it's not always the best idea. But I think, if you're struggling with what niche to be in, then even something as simple as starting to follow like different leaders in those niches and seeing like who do you relate to the most, and just maybe even like brainstorming. Like, I think for us, it wasn't even elopement photography where we started. Like, when we were thinking like, what can we do that is going to give us the lifestyle that we want to live? We came up with all sorts of ideas, like brainstorming different ways that we could earn enough money and we could be in the place we wanted to be. And then, had a list of what we're really interested in and versus what might be possible. And then work that way to figure out what would work for us. Because, we never started out thinking we wanted to be wedding photographers. It's not like our life dream to do that. But the way things have evolved, we've gotten to a place now where we really enjoy our work, but more importantly, like, we enjoy so much like the place that we get to live.
Yeah.
And we're this year we're really trying to work on our like work-life balance, because new business, it's quite hard to like allow yourself that time off, and there's a lot going on,
especially when you're still working full-time for the RSPB.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say don't be scared of outsourcing. Like, that's something we've really embraced in the last year. We've got ourselves an amazing accountant, we've got ourselves a VA, so a lot of those tasks which take up a lot of time, which you might not find very enjoyable, although it costs money to do this, we would say like really consider like outsourcing that stuff so you can spend the time you want in your business on the things that you enjoy and the things that are going to help you grow. Because I feel like a lot of photographers limit themselves in like what they can earn and the life that they can have, like with money mindset issues around spending money or charging enough to be in the situation they want to be. And so that's something I think people need to work on. And we speak to so many amazing photographers who we think like have way better work than us, who are really scared to go over the VAT threshold, for example. And you're like, you're limiting what you can earn based on this idea that you don't want to go over that. When actually, you can smash through that and you can get yourself in a much better place. But it is this mindset that I think a lot of people have. So not being scared of that and trying to really break through that, I think is important.
I'll add to that. I feel really bad. I'm like, every question, I'm going to add to that. That's the trouble with having two of us on there. I think
it turns out there's two of you in that business. I definitely want to hear from both of you. Well, ready.
Well, Steph's kind of already touched on it, but I think just being true to yourself as well, and your what really floats your boat, what you're interested in. We have had a lot of luck involved in the fact that elopements, particularly somewhere wild and inhospitable and living on a Scottish island, that's very us, and it fits with our lifestyle. And it almost felt like when Steph and I got together, I was still living in my mate's flat in Brixton, working in that fashion studio in London. And I remember the first day Steph came to visit me there, and London was like, "We're getting out of here. We're going to the countryside," because Steph's not a city person.
To be fair, I had literally just got back from Antarctica. I was like, I can't cope with this city right now.
Like, I'm happy at the South Pole, but I'm also happy like in the middle of London. Like I love it there. But yeah, what I'm trying to say though is just finding something that's really true to yourself and what you want to do. You know, like elopements have become very fashionable, and I remember when we were going on these styled shoots, when we were trying to build a portfolio when we began. Some of the other photographers I met on those shoots, I remember meeting some, and you could just tell they weren't comfortable in the outdoors. You know, it wasn't them. They were just doing it because it's trendy right now. And I think that's a big mistake. You know, another good example is probably destination elopements. I see a lot of people, also destination weddings, you know, and we kind of fell into that trap initially, I think, because we're well traveled. When we thought about wedding photography, we thought, oh, let's be destination wedding photographers and shoot all over the world. But we also had 2 young dogs to look after at home, so it didn't fit our lifestyle. It wasn't really being true to who we were.
I also hate the heat, so working in the heat, I'm like, oh no, this is a terrible mistake.
And now I know why you settled in Skye. Like this is you need to be at least negative, like Celsius, occasionally in a year, otherwise you're not happy.
Yeah. I would say like we're not introverts, but we're not extroverts. We're kind of in the middle. So for us, you know, having an elopement with 2 people, and we love like relationships with people and getting that bond. So it really fits who we are. Whereas having to look after a wedding couple when they've got 100 guests, that's not really us. But if that is you, then you should be embracing that and building a business around that.
Yeah, I love that point. Yeah, being true to yourself, I think, is important. And I know sometimes it's hard to know what you want to do. So you have to try these things. But yeah, really doing what you want and what feels comfortable for you. Like that'll come across to your clients so well. Like if you don't love it, then they'll know that. Like they can tell.
Yeah.
You know, you're not gonna put across that enthusiasm for like your niche that you need to be successful in it.
Yeah, 100%.
So on that like incredibly insightful note, I think this is a good place to kind of wrap up a little bit. So just to kind of summarize what you just said, because I want to give people the bottom line, don't be afraid to experiment and find out what you like. If you find something and you know it's non-negotiable, don't kid yourself and try and pretend that you love the outdoors if you hate it. Like if you are a nerd like me, maybe you should start talking more about nerdy things. Like if you are the kind of person that loves the outdoors and connection with the small groups of people, maybe that's something you can invest in your business. Now, I want people to stay in contact with you because, frankly, you're just great people to know. So where is the best place for people to find you? How should they reach out? What's the best way to talk to you?
So, I mean, if people just want to talk to us, then Instagram is probably the best option. So we're Oli and Steph on Instagram. So that's OLI and STEPH. There's a few ways to spell Oli, so it's hard to find us sometimes. So Instagram, like, you know, feel free to DM us on there. If you want to see our website, we're oliandsteph.com. And I'd say those are the best ways. We have a fledgling TikTok, but we're not very active on there. So I would say definitely Instagram at the moment. And we're really happy to chat to people because we find it really valuable to make relationships with people.
Yeah, I'd say community, like to come to your roundtable you've started doing, Tom. I mean, that's been brilliant so far, and I hope you keep it going on this upwards trajectory because it's so nice to connect. And you know, you don't have to necessarily like show your face. You can be in the background and just throw questions in. I kind of miss the whole Clubhouse thing. You're on it a little bit, Steph, but I know that was really you really enjoyed that, Tom, and I guess like you're kind of recreating that to a certain degree with what you're doing now. So that's awesome. I guess. Yeah, I'm just going to go on a rant about education.
It's not the question.
Well, but before we get onto that rant, I just wanted to say thanks again to both of you for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. For everybody listening in, definitely go check them out. I'm going to stick links to their Instagram, to their TikTok, maybe, if it's still going by the time that we get it. Maybe there'll be more videos then, we never know. The website, and definitely their elopement guides as well, because I think that for anybody that is listening in that's a photographer that's potentially thinking about eloping to Skye or to Scotland, you need to check it out. It's really helpful. So with all that said, thank you again for listening. We'll catch you again next week. And see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.